Hello and welcome back to Ria's Autism World. Today I'm joined by an army of Sonnet plushies. Today's video I'm going to be discussing my personal experience with the Pfizer Covid vaccine and how it's left me with 24/7 tinnitus in my left ear, which was the side I had the vaccine. So before I start, I must stress that this is absolutely not an anti-vaccine Covid video. I highly recommend people to take up the Covid vaccine because it has saved so many lives, and we just wouldn't be in the situation that we're in now if it wasn't for the vaccine. So the likelihood of developing tinnitus after the Covid vaccine is extremely slim. Common side effects include headache, nausea, chills, fever and fatigue. So my story of actually getting the Covid vaccine in the first place proved to be really difficult. So I was meant to have it around February or March 2021, but I really struggled to get one at the same time as my friends. Because I'm in the learning difficulties group, I was meant to have one early, but for some reason I was lost on the register, so my doctor just never phoned me and I got more and more anxious of going out. I suffer from extreme health anxiety, so going out was just so horrible at the time because I was just so nervous, and I just really wanted my Covid vaccine. So yeah, it was a long wait, and I had to phone my doctor asking them to put me on the learning difficulties register because I was meant to be on it, but for some reason I wasn't, so that's why I didn't hear anything. So yeah, so then not long after that I finally had a phone call saying that I was invited in to have my vaccine. So I attended the nearest clinic and I was just so excited to have it. I was all prepared, and yeah, so it was finally my chance of getting back to having a normal life. So I got into the clinic and I had my heart set on having the Pfizer vaccine, and the main reason being is as I previously mentioned, I have extreme health anxiety, and I'd read that the AstraZeneca, that there was a tiny 1% chance of having a blood clot, so that kind of just scared me just a little bit. So yeah, I was absolutely set on having the Pfizer. So I went into the clinic, I think it was late March, and it was only the AstraZeneca on the day. So I said I just will not have the AstraZeneca because of the fear of having the blood clot. Of course, those percentages are just so slim. The same really as developing tinnitus after a vaccine. So yeah, so I walked away. I burst into tears because I just prepared myself all day all week even, to have this vaccine, and I was just so excited about it. And all my friends had had the Pfizer. Everybody I knew had the Pfizer, including my mum. So yeah, it was quite a traumatic day. I was really upset. But yeah, so that was like the first hurdle that I had to come across. So here in the UK, you've never had a choice of what vaccine you can have. You're basically given what you're offered, and yeah, so really it was the waiting game for me. I did contact my doctor and told him the scenario that I turned down the AstraZeneca. I was really upset about it, and that I really wanted to have the Pfizer vaccine because my mum had the Pfizer vaccine and she'd had no side effects, and that just made me more confident to have that particular vaccine. So they said, well, it wasn't really possible because you're given what you're offered, but they did say that if they hear of any clinics in my local town or area, they'd give me a ring. So I waited a couple of weeks and I heard nothing, so I was getting really anxious at that stage. So I decided to email a clinic in my town which were giving out the Pfizer vaccines for the second doses for the older people and the people in the learning disabilities group, when I was meant to have mine. So a lot of them had the Pfizer because it was like the first vaccine that they gave out. So I sent an email saying that if anybody, I don't know, maybe something had happened or they just refused to have like their second vaccine, whether I could be considered as like somebody who could just pop in and have like one as like an extra if they had any left over, or maybe if they had any left over in the day, because I had already heard that a lot of the vaccines got like thrown out at the end of the day if they weren't used. So yeah, I just sent an email. I wasn't really expecting it to hear anything back or having any like good news. Anyway, a day later I had a response saying that they could invite me to have the Pfizer vaccine at the clinic where I went previously. So I was absolutely over the moon with this. So yeah, it was like a day later, I think. So it's the following day, or it might have been 2 days later. I can't remember 100%. But yeah, so after that email, I finally had my chance of having the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine. So yeah, I was really, really happy. So I finally had the Pfizer and I was so excited about going back and leading a normal life. I could go out and not have to worry about catching COVID. So yeah, it was like the best day ever. So anyway, after the first Pfizer, I was reasonably okay when it came to side effects. I felt a bit sleepy, so I slept for like, I don't know, 24 hours it felt like. I just couldn't get out of bed. I was just so tired. I didn't have a headache. I didn't have any fevers or chills. I didn't have any nausea. I was just really, really tired. And I never had any tinnitus. So yeah, I didn't develop any tinnitus after the first vaccine. Tinnitus was not the only long-term side effect that I experienced. I've also been living with other neurological conditions for the past year at the same time, but I'm not going to go into them in this video because it will just make it drag on too much. So yeah, this video is just going to be focused purely on my tinnitus side effect. So June the 29th arrived and it was the day that I was due to have my second Pfizer vaccine, and it was the very last day that I heard total silence, and I remember that day so well. I remember everything that happened. I remember what I was wearing. I was wearing a Sonic t-shirt, which I will probably never wear again because it just brings back so many horrible memories. Before I went for my appointment, I had time to hang around, so I went into a local carpet store because I was measuring up some carpet for my bedroom and I was really looking forward to having some new carpet. Anyway, I was meant to go back later that day after I'd had the second Pfizer, but I just never went back. So yeah, I finally arrived at the clinic. Thought it was just going to be like any other day. I thought it was just going to be easy, just like the first Pfizer, and I'd just be a little bit sleepy, but I'd be fine like in a couple of days' time. You know, I'd never even heard of like long-term side effects, and I did hear that the side effects could be a little bit more extreme. Well, not so much extreme, but worse than the first. So I thought I was kind of just expecting to be a little bit more achy and maybe have a headache this time. But yeah, I just totally wasn't prepared for what was to come. So yeah, so I had the vaccine, walked out, and I felt fine. Now I must say that I did develop like this tiny little white spot. Do you know like when you have a migraine and you like see stars? So I saw in the corner of my nose, and I just assumed maybe it's a bit of eyeshadow or makeup or highlighter. So yeah, but it's like a migraine aura, and it's stuck in the side of my eye. But that was the only side effect I had for the first couple of hours. So I got home and I already felt really sleepy, so I did go to bed and have a lie down. Anyway, I decided, I just changed my bedroom around and I put my TV on like a new shelving unit, and I'd only done it like a week before. So I decided to have like a retro video game session. So I set up my Sega Mega Drive with Sonic the Hedgehog, and so yeah, I was playing that game, and all of a sudden I just heard this doo noise really loud, just all of a sudden in my left ear. Now, my left arm was the side that I had the vaccine on, and my left ear was the side where I developed the tinnitus. And it was just so loud and it was really scary. So I have had tinnitus before, and I have had these noises happen before. But usually they only last like 10 seconds and then they kind of just disappear. And I'd have like tinnitus after going somewhere loud, or going out for the night, or going just anywhere that's just loud, or maybe going to the cinema. But then it would like pass and it would get better. Anyway, this wasn't like any tinnitus I'd ever had before, and I just knew that something wasn't right. So I went down and had my tea. I think there was football on the telly at the time. I do somehow recall there being like football on the telly. I might be wrong. But so I went down and had my tea. I told my mum that I just developed this really loud ringing in my ears. And I just didn't really think anything of it, but it wasn't going. And yeah, it just wasn't like any of the tinnitus I'd had before. I just felt really groggy and I felt tired. But I don't remember having a headache. So yeah, or I didn't have any fevers or chills. But after I had my tea, I just went up to bed and had a sleep. So the following morning, I still woke up with tinnitus. My ear was still ringing really loud. I would put the volume at say a 9. It was extremely loud. It was reactive tinnitus, so I could hear it above literally everything. So if you turned up the TV to say 100, the tinnitus would rise and get louder, so nothing masked the sound at all, even loud music. I had no escape if I went out for, say, a walk. It was like really, because I live like in a village, everything was like really quiet, so yeah, and it just made the tinnitus even louder. I looked forward to going to my local city or going into town because it was loud, and the traffic like helped it like a tiny weeny little bit. But as I mentioned, the tinnitus that I experienced was reactive, so it would just get louder and louder. So what happened next? I must also mention that my tinnitus wasn't just a straight noise. It was at first, for the first couple of days, but it kind of just went. I'm not very good at making noises or kind of describing things, but it kind of like vibrated. It wasn't just a steady sound. So it's like a ooh, like that for ages. And that, I think, was what was the worst thing for me, because that was just infuriating, that just fluctuating noise. So not only did it react to any noise, it would get louder and louder. It was just a horrible wavy kind of sound. So yeah, that definitely made it worse. What else happened? I also, from about second week onwards, I started hearing like sirens. So not only when I went outside or had like the telly on loud would it react and get louder, I started to hear sirens all the time, like proper loud sirens. And again, that was part of the tinnitus, because there weren't any sirens around 24/7. Now that wasn't as bad when I was in a quiet room. So the sirens are more reacting when there's with loud noise kind of thing. So when I was like somewhere quiet, I didn't really have the siren sound. So yeah, that is how I can really describe the first 2 weeks. They were absolutely awful. Yeah, so the initial side effects, like the tiredness, only really lasted 48 hours, but the tinnitus, sadly, I've had to live with, I think it's like 9 months on now. So yeah, and it hasn't gone away. It's still been 24/7, and it's something that I've just had to come to terms with. I just know it's just never going to go away. And yeah, so that is my story for the first 2 weeks. So in the early days of my tinnitus, I turned to support groups online just to see if there was anybody in the same situation as me, because at the time I felt very alone. Everybody I knew only had mild side effects to the vaccine, and they definitely didn't have any tinnitus. So yeah, I was desperate for answers, desperate for a cure. I was desperate to find out whether there was anybody else in the same situation as me. I was desperate, anything just to get rid of this horrific noise I was hearing. So yeah, once I joined the support group, I found out that I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one out there who'd suffered this side effect of the vaccine. It was still extremely rare. There wasn't that many people with tinnitus as a side effect of the vaccine. I think there was only like a couple of thousand people. But yeah, at least I knew that it wasn't just me, even if it was rare. So yeah, I was kind of gutted to find out that there wasn't a cure. And I just can't believe it, in 2021, well, 2022 now, but at the time, 2021, in this day of age, there was no cure for tinnitus, and millions of people suffer from it over the world. So yeah, I just couldn't get over the fact that I'd have to live with this awful noise for the rest of my life, and it just made me feel really depressed. So I sank into deep depression at the time, and yeah, just to know that I just had to live with it forever, and there was nothing I could do, nothing I could take to take this noise away. So anyway, people in this group suggested supplements, so I decided to give supplements a try, because at the time I was desperate. I just wanted to try anything. So I tried vitamin C and multivitamins, and I took them for 30 days. Now, I cannot confirm whether or not they helped. I only took them for the 30 days, so I didn't renew them afterwards, so I didn't buy any more bottles after that. So yeah, I must say that 2 weeks into taking them, something did happen on one of the days, and I haven't got to that point in the video yet because it's just a little bit further on in the video, but I will discuss that. And I cannot confirm whether it was to do with taking the supplements, but in my personal opinion, I think time is the key for healing. And yeah, I just don't think it was anything to do with taking vitamin supplements. So yeah, I just kind of stopped taking them because I just didn't believe that they were working. So yeah, so the first 2 weeks were very difficult. I did try and get a doctor's appointment to see if there is anything that they could recommend. I know that there's no cure, and there's like no medication that I could take, but I was just desperate for anything that they could offer. So yeah, I tried to get an appointment for over a week, and I tried 3 times, I think, and I wasn't able to get an appointment. And then on July the 10th, it all got too much for me. I just couldn't put up the noise any longer. So I went to A&E, and it was an horrific experience. I'm not going to go in fully into what happened because it's just something that I don't feel comfortable sharing on here. But basically, I went there hoping to be prescribed some prednisone, which is a steroid, because I'd heard on a support group that it helps like a tiny percentage of tinnitus sufferers to gain recovery in like the early days. So if you take it within like 2 weeks, you could recover. And I was just relying on this prednisone for the miracle cure. So yeah, I really got my hopes up on that. And so yeah, I went to the A&E. I waited like over 2 hours to be seen. I saw this horrible lady. She didn't believe that tinnitus was caused by the vaccine. She said, don't believe everything you read online. The vaccine doesn't cause tinnitus. And that kind of just made me really cross, because I knew that it did, because mine started within 6 hours of having the second Pfizer vaccine. And I'd never had tinnitus like it before. So yeah, I was kind of just like, how can you say that? You know, because the vaccines were all new at the time. And she said, well, there's nothing we can give you. Don't believe everything you read online, and I'll put you through to see a doctor. So yeah, I waited about another hour. I saw the doctor. I begged him to prescribe me prednisone, because because I just felt it's my last hope of recovery, because it was early on in my tinnitus onset. So yeah, I was thinking that was a good chance of recovery, and I begged him, but he would not have it. He said prednisone won't help tinnitus. There's no proof that it would help. But in America, they were prescribing it to loads of people who'd developed tinnitus since the vaccine. So they were prescribing it to people in America, but not in this country. So he did go off for half an hour and research he did research the prednisone helping tinnitus, and he said that it was only a trial in America, and he's not willing to prescribe it to me. So the lady I saw beforehand, she agreed that, you know, it won't help, we are not going to give it you. And I can't really say what happened next, but basically I had a massive meltdown, absolutely massive autistic meltdown, and I was kind of screaming and crying, and things went on, and yeah, I was in quite a bad state at that time. So yeah, that was that really. I did go home and research it more. I spoke to people who'd had the prednisone for tinnitus, and they said that realistically it didn't help them at all. And if it did help them, or did help the tinnitus, once they stopped taking the prednisone, it kind of, the tinnitus came back straight away afterwards. So yeah, it wasn't a long-term solution, and I did find out further down the line that it mainly just helps people with hearing loss. So it was mainly for hearing loss more so than tinnitus. So yeah, so I didn't pursue that any longer, and I just kind of just thought, well, time is the biggest healer. There's nothing I could do that would help anyway, so I just kind of just went with that really. So shortly after my A&E visit, I went on a holiday. So I was really depressed at the time. I was kind of like dealing with living with a new disability, something that I just knew I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. And at the time, with it being like a 9 in volume, and it was still reacting, it was still super loud and reacting to when the noise would rise, my tinnitus would get louder, and I was still hearing sirens, and it was just horrific. So yeah, I just wasn't feeling in the mood for a holiday at all, but I thought, well, do you know what? It just might help, you know. It would help take my mind off everything. My mind would be focused on something else. So yeah, so I did end up going. I still heard it 24/7, but it did kind of help me to focus, just not focus on the tinnitus 24/7. So anyway, I'd take my supplements every night all week, so I didn't forget to take the supplements. So anyway, it was only a 5-day holiday, so it was Monday to Friday. On the Friday morning, I woke up and something strange happened. So, as I previously mentioned in my early days of the tinnitus, probably like the first 2 weeks, I had that fluctuating noise, like a wavy noise. It's like ooh, 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 kind of noise. So it wasn't a straight noise. So on the morning of the day that we had to leave, I woke up and the tinnitus had stopped. Now, I can honestly say in all these months, it was the only day that it stopped. And yeah, and I just thought, oh my God, it's finally gone, you know, and I just couldn't believe it. So I went to the toilet. I went to like a really quiet room and I thought, this cannot be happening, you know, it's actually stopped. I'm not going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. So yeah, I couldn't confirm because it was a caravan, there was still noises around that I couldn't confirm 100% whether I could just hear silence. But I knew that the fluctuating noise had at least stopped. So it was just about 2 weeks on, so yeah, they say that the first 2 weeks are the worst. And so I got the train home and the noise was still really, really quiet. In fact, I couldn't hear it at all because it was a loud train. And yeah, so it was just great. I just felt so happy, you know. I know it's like the last day of the holiday, but it was just like the best news ever, really, that, you know, maybe this tinnitus won't be forever. I heard silence when I woke up, you know. I can still hear silence now. So when I got home, several hours later, I went to my bedroom and I still couldn't confirm 100% whether the tinnitus had completely disappeared. So I don't know if I could hear it just like a tiny weeny little bit. Maybe like a 1 in volume at the most. But it had definitely got better. And so I was just so happy, you know. So I couldn't confirm whether it was the vitamins or not. So yeah, the following day, so when I woke up the following day, unfortunately the tinnitus did come back, so I can 100% confirm that it wasn't permanent. And I can't really confirm the volume, but it was really, really low. So it's about maybe like a 2, I think it was, maybe a 2 or 3. So yeah, it was very mild. It was a straight noise there. It wasn't the fluctuating noise. It no longer reacted to louder noise. I no longer heard sirens. So yeah, I was really pleased about that. Ever since that day, my tinnitus has just been fairly mild. So it has stayed at that volume ever since. So on a normal day, I hear tinnitus between a 1 and a 3 in volume. Sometimes I just forget I have it at all until I go to bed at night when it's just a completely quiet room. It's only ever stayed in my left ear. I've never lost any hearing, and it's kind of just stayed at between a 1 and 3 in volume most of the time. The only time I can confirm that it gets louder is when it's my time of the month. So when I'm due my period, it does rise in volume. So I would say it rises to about a 6 or a 7 between 5 and 6 days before my period and like a few days into it. I have no idea why that is. At the moment, it's kind of that time of the month for me, and my tinnitus is starting to rise again. It started to rise for the past 2 days or so, and I would say at the moment, as of making this video, it's about a 4 and a 5 in volume. I can really hear it tonight in my left ear. But before that, I always just think, you know, do I even still have tinnitus? Most of the time it's that mild that I think maybe this is it, it's gone. And then I get to this time of the month and then it kind of comes back. And I think, all right, it hasn't gone at all. It's just really mild the rest of the month. And another time I can confirm, which really set it off, is when I had to put eardrops down my ear last October. So I suffer with earwax build-up and I have to take ear drops. So I took them in October, and for some reason it really set off my tinnitus, and it was super loud. I wouldn't say to the extreme of the first 2 weeks, and it didn't react and it wasn't like fluctuating, but it was loud. I would say at least a 7 or an 8 in volume, and that was for about 2 weeks. And I couldn't continue putting the eardrops down my ears because it made it quite bad. So I had to just discontinue that and just live with the slightly blocked ear, you know. So yeah, but other than that, I think they're the only things that really set my tinnitus off now. I live on a normal diet, so I hear that certain diets, people swear by these diets, can help reduce tinnitus, but I never did try any of that because because of my autism, I have a very limited, strict diet. I only eat a very small amount of food. No, sorry, like a very small selection of food. I eat a lot, but a very small selection of food. So I do eat a lot of sugar. I do eat a lot of chocolate and sweet things. I do eat a lot of salt. I just eat very unhealthily. So, and considering my tinnitus is only like a 1 in 3 on most normal days, I wouldn't say that I needed to change my diet for it or take any of these things that people try. People like suggest all these things and these miracle cures and stuff, but I just haven't really been willing to try it. I have been considering taking the vitamin C and the multivitamins again, just to help maybe like when it's this time of the month for me to bring the volume down a little bit, because I still don't know whether that was what stopped it for that one day, because I was taking the vitamin supplements for that at that time. So yeah, I might give that a try again. So yeah, as of making this video, I am into month 9 and I still very much have the tinnitus, and I don't believe it'll ever go away. It's something I've just had to come to terms with. I'm no longer depressed over it. I do have my life back now. So yeah, I am pleased that I've managed to come to terms with it and live with it. It's, as I mentioned, it's very mild, so it's not affecting my life as it once did. I still get angry at what happens, like, why me? What if I'd just had the first vaccine and not the second one? I would have been okay now. I do think back to my old life when I just heard total silence. But, you know, things happen, and sometimes you have to take a chance at something, even though you know. And I still believe what I did was the right thing, because of course the vaccine is a fantastic thing, and the chances of having a rare side effect is extremely slim. So yeah, I am still pleased that I had the vaccine. Yeah, so as I mentioned at the start of the video, I highly recommend for anybody to take the offer of the COVID vaccine, because yeah, the alternative is just horrible. I mean, you know, the thousands of deaths over the world, across the world, since the pandemic started, it's just horrible. So yeah, as I mentioned, that this is not an anti-vaccine video. I'm not trying to scare anybody off from having the vaccine either. It's just simply to raise awareness of tinnitus being a side effect, and maybe you might have experienced tinnitus around the time that you had the vaccine, and maybe you just didn't realise what had caused it. You know, you might have just been to like a concert, or you might have been unwell and you just think maybe it just coincided with that, and you just might have not thought that it could be to do with the vaccine. So yeah, that's the only reason I decided to raise awareness in this video. To say that you're not alone, and there are a few thousand other people in the same situation. And yeah, so I think that is pretty much it for this video then. I do plan to make a part 2 of all the other side effects that I've had to live with since I had both of the Pfizer vaccines. and I will definitely make an updated video if my tinnitus suddenly stops. So yeah, that will be the first thing I will do. I will come onto YouTube and tell everybody in the world that my tinnitus has stopped, and hopefully that day will come very soon. I don't see that happening, but hopefully, you know. I have heard that there's experimental drugs for tinnitus. I did read that in like a support group, so that does give me hope. Even though mine's mild, other people's unfortunately aren't so mild, so that would really help benefit people in like a worse situation than myself. So I really do hope that that comes about and it helps people. So we've come to the end of this video. I hope my story has helped you in some way. Please subscribe and comment below if you're interested in seeing my future content. Until then, thanks for watching.